All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sandro Tejada, Director of Major Gifts and the Seton Hall Parents Program. Thank you for joining Seton Hall Week and our virtual offering, How I Got Here discussion with Seton Hall parents Phil Polk and Judge Nora Polk. This session, again, is being recorded. We will have an on-demand page. We'll add all our Seton Hall Week recorded sessions to this page. Please kindly mute yourself, and if you have any questions during the session, use the raise your hand icon on the top right of your screen. Use the chat feature to share your questions or hold your questions until our Q&A session. Now, the How I Got Here discussions provides our students the opportunity to get a firsthand perspective about the careers enjoyed by our talented Seton Hall parents. I'm honored today to have the privilege to introduce our guest speakers, Phil Polk and Judge Nora Polk. I'll start with Judge Nora Polk, who's a native Texan, received her BA in political science for Texas A&M University. I imagine that's where she met Phil, and I imagine they'll share a little bit about that story. She was a recipient of the Texas A&M Presidential Achievement Scholarship and a member of Tau Kappa Honor Society. She received her Juris Doctor from the University of Cincinnati College of Law, where she was the president of the Black Law Student Association, a member of the Dean's Diversity Task Force, and on the Dean's List. During her law school career, she attended the University of Cape Town in South Africa to study comparative justice through a study abroad program. In 2017, Judge Polk was appointed as a full-time associate magistrate judge. Her duties now include the supervision of the Civil Division of Magistrate Court, presiding over civil and criminal matters, addressing administrative concerns, and coordinating community outreach and education. Philip Polk, an executive with more than 22 years of marketing leadership experience, serves as a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Lead, National Center of Civil and Human Rights. In this role, Phil is responsible for developing, educating, training, and consulting with corporations, educational institutions, and national government organizations. Previously, Phil served as Chief Diversity Officer for Hallmark Cards, where he launched Hallmark's Diversity and Inclusion Department. Phil has also worked extensively with employee resource groups, including the Corporate Diversity and Inclusion Council at Hallmark, business resource groups at Cox Communication, and internal employee groups at previous employers, Walt Disney World and Coca-Cola, to extend the impact of the company's overall diversity and inclusion activity. Phil also earned his bachelor's degree from Texas A&M University and a master's degree in business administration from Clark Atlanta University. Thank you both, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us. Phil, you want to go first?
Sure. So much of what we will talk about is kind of a combined trajectory of our careers. As you mentioned, Sandro, we both started our professional lives at Texas A&M University. And what we're going to do is walk you through the various stages of our professional lives, and we will do that jointly. So I'll start with the decision to go to college. We both ended up at Texas A&M University, which is in Central Texas. Both of us are from Dallas, Texas, but we didn't know each other. I'm sorry. I'm from Dallas, Texas. My wife is from Arlington, Texas, a suburb. About 20 minutes apart, actually, are our homes, but we didn't know each other until we got to college. So I decided to go to Texas A&M because I knew, quite frankly, friends of mine that were going to Texas A&M, and I thought that Texas A&M would really give me an opportunity to experience life in the big city, even though College Station was about College Station is in a college town, but there were about 45,000 people there when we went. So it was an opportunity for us to really understand how to navigate a large city. And we went to school. It was about 2.5 hours away from Dallas, which was, far enough away for us, but still having kind of home resources and being our parents being able to, as they say, lay their eyes on us. And so I think that we both made, a good decision to go there. I started as a major in computer science and quickly found out that that wasn't going to be for me. So I changed my major to business and that's where I graduated from. And before we go and talk about what we did at our first jobs, I'll let Nora talk a little bit about her decision to go to Texas A&M and the major that she chose.
Okay, so I'm not going to talk about that, but I will talk to you about becoming a lawyer. I think I wanted to become a lawyer like at age 8. It was something I knew I wanted to do. I have an older brother. He's 6 years older than I am. And we argued a lot. I was pretty good at holding my own. And I thought, well, law, you could get paid to argue for somebody. That might be for me. So going to school, that was like a no-brainer. But one of the things that I learned, kind of that hindsight looking back, I didn't change my major. I went in as a political science major because that is what, everyone's like, oh, you want to go to law school, you should have a political science major. I actually like political science. I am a huge history buff. I like political regimes. So it was a wonderful subject for me to study, but I know we've got a lot of parents that are joining us today on this call. And if you have students that are interested in going to law school after their time at Seton Hall, they can major in anything in undergrad. There is no requirement to major in what have you. I always recommend to students that you major in something that you are drawn to, that you like. You want to have a diverse education and diverse background if you're going to be a lawyer in any area of practice. And if you like the subject matter, you're probably going to do better in it, which means your grades are going to be better and your opportunities to go to law school will increase. But again, that's something I didn't learn until after the fact. I was just one of those lucky people that love political science. And then, of course, during my time at A&M is when I met this guy, and we ended up getting married. When we got married, he was already into his first year of business school at Clark Atlanta University. And he was in a 2-year program. I started law school in Georgia at Mercer University and commuted. And then once he graduated from Clark, he took a job in Ohio with Procter & Gamble, and I transferred to University of Cincinnati to finish my law school career. So I guess now that I'm kind of into that, I will say both of us had a year outside of school after we graduated. Neither one of us went directly into graduate school. I worked for a year and he worked for a year. I worked for a trucking company. He worked for a paper company. And I will say for both of those experiences, my viewpoint was a lot different. Even though I only worked for a year, my viewpoint was a lot different than my classmates. Many of my classmates in law school had gone straight into law school from undergrad. And I am very thankful that I took that 1 year to work, because it helped me put a lot of things in perspective. Because before, everything was academic. Everything was kind of this construct. You all know when you're in college, it's a microcosm kind of a world, but it allowed me just some real life experience in a work environment to better understand when I went to law school, like this is why these things are important. I wasn't learning the material in a vacuum. I was able to pull back on some examples, and that's, just with very, very little work experience. I had some internships when I was in undergrad as well. But still, it was very helpful to work that year. So again, if you've got a student that's interested in going to graduate school, but they are kind of determining whether or not they want to work for a year, they have a job opportunity, I would encourage them, because they're going to take more advantage of that situation than maybe someone that goes straight through, because their perspective is going to be different. Let's see, I've gotten us to graduate school, so you can take over from here.
Yes. So similar to Nora, I worked for a year after undergrad, but I will tell you all, in the spirit of transparency, I didn't have a long-term plan after I graduated college. So I went and got a job. It was a decent job, but I always felt like I could contribute more. Unfortunately, I was not a stellar undergraduate student. So the first question I had to ask myself was, how can I present myself in the most positive light so that I can, make these contributions I feel like I have? And so I decided to go to graduate school to kind of reset my professional career. And so one of the things I will say, especially to parents, is if you have a child that in undergraduate kind of knows what they want to do, but not really, even though it may be difficult as a parent, I would say give your child some space to find their own way. And I'm glad that I did, because when I went to graduate school, I had a passion for business and marketing. I love to talk. And so I thought that it would be a good opportunity for me to better showcase my strengths. So I went to Clark Atlanta, and it was the perfect opportunity for me to really discover my voice, to discover who I was. And so after that first year of the MBA program, I had an internship at Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, Ohio. The internship went well, and as Nora said, once I graduated from Clark Atlanta, I was able to, better fit into a corporate environment. And so those first 3 years of my professional life in Cincinnati went very, very well. I was able to support our family as my wife finished graduate school. And when she finished law school, she said, I have an opportunity, and well, I'll let her tell the story about the decision to.
I think
to take
our
her,
versions of this story may be a little different. So I'm gonna tell mine. I'm gonna take over from here. But he's right. As I mentioned earlier, I started law school, and here, when he took the job in Ohio with Procter & Gamble, I transferred, went to University of Cincinnati, got very engaged and involved in school there. It was absolutely wonderful. I had a phenomenal time going to school there. And after my first year, I had the opportunity to study abroad in South Africa. And we were the first study abroad program allowed in the country after apartheid ended. So this is not too long after apartheid ended. And it was a very interesting situation, a little difficult, and sometimes maybe a scared, dangerous. But I learned a lot. I had an opportunity to spend the summer there and interact with people and just see kind of what's going on and how they are developing as a people and in their movement. From law school, after that first year, when I transferred, a few things happened to me. Pivotal things happened while we were in law school. First, we got married before I started school, which, led to me starting in Georgia. And then my third year of law school, I had our first son. So my perspective changed even more about what do I want to do. I have this kind of guiding line, this plumb line about what my beliefs. I believe that the world should be better because I'm here. What am I doing? What is my purpose? And for me, that it's been very simple. It's a very simple statement. But I believe that I'm here to help people, and how that looks has changed and morphed over the years, but I always kept that. And it became even more poignant to me once we had our first son. I worked for the public defender's office in Hamilton County, Ohio, right after law school. And that was just a job I continued with that I had during law school. I had several offers in Ohio, and I was just at the point where I was like, I don't want to raise my son here. I don't want to raise my son here for a number of reasons. And I really, I had this real concern at the time. I was really concerned about the effects of gentrification on the lower socioeconomic community within the bounds of Cincinnati where we lived. And there was a fellowship that was available through legal aid in Atlanta that was dealing with this same issue. I kept in good contact with our career counselor, and she contacted me and asked me if I was interested in interviewing for this fellowship. I interviewed for the fellowship. I was like, this is great. We can move back to Atlanta. It's closer to our family, getting to and from our family in Texas. And this is exactly what I want to do at this time. There was just one small little hitch. I did not necessarily consult my husband about all of this. I came home one day and I said that, hey, look, I'm moving to Atlanta. Got this job. I went ahead and said yes. So are you guys coming with me? And I was lucky that they were. I mean, I knew I had a good feeling that it was all going to work out fine. But yeah, that's how we ended up back in Atlanta. Luckily, he had an offer from Coke to leave Procter and Gamble. So we were able to return back here to Atlanta. I started working for Legal Aid and worked for Legal Aid for about 8 years. After my fellowship was over, I took a full-time job and became a supervising attorney there. And I love that work. So that's kind of how I got into my first job. But Phil, I will let you now go into how you got into your second one, I guess, now.
Yeah, so as we talk about this theme of how I got here, there's two primary themes that I want to stress. One is the power of the professional network. The other is the concept of flexibility. So as Nora mentioned, when she graduated from law school and made the decision to move back to Atlanta, I had a fairly, I wouldn't even call it extensive because I'd only been working for about 3 years, but I had a bit of a network at Procter & Gamble, which allowed me to find a job in Atlanta. And so I knew as a marketer at a big global corporation like Procter & Gamble, I would have a lot of opportunities to move around. And so since my goal was to get to Atlanta and reconnect our family, I was able to do that at Coca-Cola. So I moved to Atlanta with Nora and our first son at Coca-Cola. Now, I had an opportunity after Coca-Cola to further expand my career, but it was a bit of a nuance in that the job that I took after Coca-Cola was at Walt Disney World. The one catch is that the job was in Orlando, Florida, and my family lived in Atlanta. So I made the decision to commute. Now, I thought at the time I was a bit of a unicorn because we had 2 children, and I was driving to Orlando back and forth every week from Atlanta. And it was difficult. Not only was it difficult because of the travel and the commuting that I did, my wife was essentially a single parent of 2 small children and the supervisor of a law office. So she was also being stretched thin. But again, with respect to flexibility, after I'd been at Disney World for about 2 or 3 years, I decided that it was time to come back home and kind of reconnect. So I took a job with Cox Communications, the third largest cable company in the country. If you think about Comcast and Time Warner, Cox was third. So I stayed there for about 8 years, and that's where I was really introduced to multicultural marketing. And so that's when I started to focus on marketing to underrepresented communities. And at work, I was one of the only people in my particular department that focused on these underrepresented communities. So I was able to become a subject matter expert, even though I had to, kind of go to Walt Disney World and commute for 3 years to get there. And so after I spent about 8 years at Cox Communications, I decided to take another step. And so I left Cox Communications and went to run a Latino advertising agency in Atlanta. And I did that simply because I really love the creative process, making commercials and all of those fun things that we do in marketing. And I did that for about 3 years. I was the only non-Latino in the office. And of about 40 people, I was one of 3 that was native born to the United States. So it was a cultural immersion for sure, but it also helped accelerate my understanding of the underrepresented communities that I worked with. And so it was a fantastic immersion. It definitely added to my skill set. And after I did that work for about 3 years, I had another opportunity to move and explore a marketing job at Hallmark. Another nuance, Hallmark is located in Kansas City, Missouri. So I commuted again. At this time, our children were much older. They were self-sufficient. And so the commute for me was really about how do I expand my role? And this is my first time in an executive level position. I was a vice president of multicultural strategy when I went to Hallmark. And so this notion of flexibility was such that I didn't have a career plan that said, I'm going to go here. I'm going to start as a manager. I'm going to work my way up to a director. And then I'm going to, ride off into the sunset. I wanted to continue to learn. And I was really interested in learning from some of best. So going from Procter & Gamble to Coca-Cola to Walt Disney World to Hallmark really gave me an opportunity, number one, to put together a fantastic resume, but also, more importantly, to learn more skills because I still didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I just wanted to make sure that as I transitioned and as I continued to learn and work, I was adding and expanding my skill set. So it wasn't like I was a 16-year marketing professional. I went from marketing toothpaste and shampoo to marketing visitation and having people come to the world's #1 destination for vacations in Walt Disney World, and then able to go to a globally iconic brand like Hallmark. So I was fortunate in that way, but the flexibility that I kind of continued in my career allowed me to say, you know, I've never done multicultural work for a card company, and definitely not in the Midwest. So it was a geographic exploration as well as a career exploration. But my career took a bit of a turn when I got to Hallmark because I was offered the position to start and lead a diversity and inclusion business for Hallmark. That was important because while I was at Hallmark, the demographics of the United States shifted. So when I started my career at Procter & Gamble, the United States was probably about 70% Caucasian, 30% other. By the time I got to Hallmark, those numbers were closer to 50-50. And so the work that I was doing and had been doing in the multicultural space became more important to the company. So moving into diversity and inclusion, I was able to take the skills I learned in multicultural marketing and apply them in a way that was a little different than other people that did diversity and inclusion. Most of them came from human resources. I was able to come to diversity and inclusion from marketing, which made me a bit of a unicorn because not many people in the diversity and inclusion space were able to talk about it in terms of benefits to the internal company as well as benefits in the marketplace. So the ability to be flexible, the ability to take jobs that on their face didn't look as though they were perfect, allowed me the opportunity to position myself in diversity and inclusion in a way that many of my peers and colleagues didn't have the opportunity to do. So we'll talk a lot about this concept of fresh starts, this concept of being open to what might come to you from a career perspective. And Nora and I represent two different paths because Nora decided to go to law school, and her career, while it has been flexible, has also been kind of in that same discipline vein. For me, the opportunity to learn marketing and diversity and inclusion skills and experience from many different companies has given me the opportunity to kind of have a portfolio mindset. So as we sit here and talk with you guys about our journey, I would say that mine is really marked by flexibility and the ability to leverage my network. But I would also say that while my wife's career may not have been as flexible, she has been supremely she has benefited from the fact that her career and her network is such that it has not only given her professional experience, but she has become really a whirlwind leader in community efforts as well. So I think that, you know, our careers have brought us to the same space, but we've gotten here in a couple of very different ways.
Well, one of the things I would say, just to piggyback on what Phil has talked about, would be the importance of networking. And networking happens in many, many different ways. I think people see it traditionally as, hey, let's go to this cocktail party and I walk around and give people my business card. Obviously, that is outdated and arcane given our digital world today. But networking in and of itself is important. And the best networking comes from relationship building. The best lawyers have the best relationships because you don't reach resolution without relationship. And relationships also, that networking allows you to get those opportunities, to get those positions. Just as Philip said, you know, things came up, he was able to network and meet with individuals. For me, the opportunities came to me. I didn't seek them out, they just came to me. When I was working for legal aid, one of the, I wouldn't call this a benefit, but one of the outcomes of Philip going back and forth with me, taking care of two small kids and trying to run an office and running back and forth, I literally ran myself ragged. My caseload, I had too many active cases. I did in our office, I handled a little bit of everything, but I had a very heavy domestic relations calendar. So I had very heavily contested child custody trials going on and divorces. It was a lot of high stress. I ended up in the hospital with an ulcer. When I got out of while I was in the hospital, my phone rang the entire time with people calling me from the office. And the doctor said, pretty straightforward, this is why you're here. You're here because these people are still calling you and you're in the hospital. So when I got back home and got settled, I got a call from another supervising attorney of another office, a colleague of mine, who had been talking about starting her own firm. And she contacted me because she said, look, you know everybody. I was trying to think about who could help me kind of get the word out, whatever. And I thought about you. And then I thought, hey, I'll just ask you to be my partner. And I was not looking at doing that. I always tell people, hey, law school teaches you how to be a lawyer. It does not teach you how to own a business or anything like that. And I was not, I was just fearful. And one of the things she asked me was, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And, I was like, well, of course I would say yes, but that's not even on the table. I'm scared, so I'm not doing it. But she went behind my back and spoke to my husband. So then I started getting double teamed on it. But it was a wonderful decision. We started our firm, Ashby and Polk, and we had that firm for several years. And in that capacity, I was able to grow even more. I became a trained mediator. I was a guardian ad litem for domestic relations court. I was a ombudsman for the bankruptcy court, and determining kind of what should happen when, unfortunately, like a nursing home has to be reorganized financially to make sure that the patients got appropriate care. I was a housing officer, hearing officer for the housing authority. But in that role, I was able to learn and do so much. And then during that period of time, we interacted with the chief judge of my court, who had just gotten a position as chief of the court. And I was congratulating her. And I was like, oh, congratulations. I'm so excited for you. I knew her because years previously, she had also worked for legal aid. And we just always kept in touch. And my partner and I took her to lunch as a celebration. And at the end of the day, she said, I took my wallet out to pay for her lunch. And she said, you can't pay for my lunch because I don't want that to, look untoward because I'm about to offer you a job. Totally out the blue. And, I was kind of vacillating. I don't know if I want to do this or not. And that was in 2010. I submitted my information. There has to go through an approval process. My job is appointed, but I have to be, everyone has to sign off on it before the governor signs off on the appointment. And it's another great decision. And I was like, I'm not that great. I'm not this fabulous person, but it was a good decision for me. I love my job. My job has developed over time. I became the supervising judge of our court for civil division matters, and handling our administrative and community education matters almost 4 years ago now. And it's just been great. But all of those kind of opportunities came to me. But first and foremost, they came because I had relationships. That networking, taking that networking a step further and having those conversations with individuals, meeting with folks. I tell students, and I talk to law students kind of on a regular basis, that, don't be afraid to have an informational interview. You find somebody that's doing what you want to do. Lawyers love to talk, and we love to talk about ourselves. So, ask to speak with them and have the conversation we're all having now. How did I get there? How did you get to this position? Because not only are you gaining valuable information, you are also developing your network, and just being savvy about those things. But that connection, that's really what's going to help you. As you all know, when you leave one position and go to another, you normally need to have some type of recommendation, you've got to have some type of referral, and building these networks helps in doing that. So I think for me, that was kind of my trajectory as far as moving from one position to the next. It was really because of, and I always tell people, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It was really because folks saw something in me that they thought would benefit them where they were, and they came to me with those offers. And that's how I've kind of moved forward in my job here in legal profession here in Atlanta. So I guess I'm up to today. Are we current?
Yeah, well, let me get current. So as Nora talked about, the importance of networking is paramount. And when before I got to Kansas City, and kind of going back to the beginning, one of the things I knew I wanted, I just didn't know how to get there, is that I wanted to feel important. And I wanted to be in a place when I spoke about recommendations or thoughts, people took me seriously and I was able to implement those thoughts. And so as I thought about, kind of that core truth, I meandered through a lot of different career stops. And when I got to diversity and inclusion, something internally just kind of clicked. And I realized that, we've lived in predominantly African-American communities throughout our life. I've seen a lot of the treatment that people from underrepresented communities have had to experience. I didn't always feel good about it, but I also didn't really know what I could do. When I got into diversity and inclusion, one of the things I realized was that entire discipline, that entire career path was about making sure that everyone in your particular organization had a voice. And it was really about making sure that people felt that they belonged at companies. I knew how important that was to me. And this discipline change from marketing to diversity and inclusion gave me an opportunity to have other people realize, kind of what it felt to belong, what it felt like to have a voice. And so when I left Kansas City, I decided to come back home. My youngest son was graduating high school and going off to college, and my wife and I were going to be empty nesters. And the idea of us being empty nesters in two different states wasn't that comfortable. So her being an empty nester here in Atlanta, me doing the same thing in Kansas City, didn't feel as comfortable without other people in the house. And so the same time my son was graduating high school and preparing for college, I came home that summer and looked for a job. So this is where the network comes in again, because my wife had a dear friend who was able to recommend me to the National Museum for Civil and Human Rights. And so when I talked with them, they said, we are a museum. We talk about the civil and human rights trajectory of the United States from the beginning of the civil rights movement to now. But in the midst of George Floyd's tragic death, in the midst of a lot of social unrest, a lot of companies were coming to the museum saying, hey, can you guys help us figure out how to facilitate conversations in our companies about all of our employees so people feel like they can express themselves. And as a corporation, we're not really well versed in how to have racially, kind of tense conversations. I was able to come in with the marketing background, kind of understanding different communities and their experiences, and be able to facilitate and train companies on how you allow people to talk about and express their feelings, and how you create as a company a strategy that allows you not only to help optimize what your employees can bring to the table, but it also helps you see kind of the external marketplace in a different way. And at the end of the day, in marketing, it's all about how much you can sell and how much money you can make. But I also thought it was important personally to have empathy. And so as I go to work, I get to talk with people about, hey, put yourself in someone else's shoes. Really try to feel and understand what it is they are experiencing. And if you can do that, then you can have a dialogue that otherwise is difficult to have. Not many people are comfortable conversing about race, generally speaking. And in today's time of tension, it's even more difficult. And so being able to walk into a room and have a conversation that brings two sides together, what I found is that that's ultimately what I wanted to do. And so as a result, I'm successful at it. So this notion of leveraging a network, this notion of being flexible, allows you to kind of have a trajectory where it's okay not to know the end point. If you'd have told me when I graduated from undergrad that I would have an MBA from Clark Atlanta, that I would marry my college sweetheart, and that I would be able to stand up and talk to people in a way that helps them get along better than they were previously, that's not something that I would have said, yeah, that can happen to me. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to work in 2 different states and try to figure out the commuting thing in the middle of all of that, I would have said that that's a career trajectory that I'd rather not have. That's too much complexity. That's too much, uncertainty. But what I have found is that saying yes to those opportunities has taken me a bunch of different places. But ultimately, we are now back home in Atlanta, being able to manage our careers, both feeling happy and at least now fulfilled. But I can't sit here and tell you that I won't take another opportunity that allows me to go global. Another opportunity that allows us to find a home on a beach. We don't know. But what we are much more comfortable with is that not every destination has the same path. And so you can do many different things to kind of ultimately land where you want to be. But the way you get there, for us anyway, is unscripted. So in terms of how we got here, I got here by saying yes to opportunities that didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time. But when I look back over my career, I say, had I not done those things, had I not gone to Orlando, had I not gone to Kansas City, I don't know that I would be here feeling fulfilled and thinking about things that I could do moving forward that I never would have thought about. So ultimately, my message to you as a parent, to you as a student, to you as an administrator is encourage current students and potentially yourselves to follow your path of passion. And ultimately, it will lead you where you are supposed to be. I would just add the caveat that it's okay if you don't know where you're going to end up. What's more important is that you follow your passion because you can make sure that you're fulfilled. One of the things I've learned in the course of this 20 some odd year journey is not about the money. If you chase money, you will continue to chase money. And it's not bad to make it, but there has to be something else. And what I've found is that, professional and career fulfillment is just awesome. Having people at church, having people in our private circles come and say, talk to me a little bit more about this notion of diversity and inclusion. People at my job are talking about it. It's a relatively new discipline. So I kind of feel like internet folks felt in the early aughts. Nobody knew what the internet was, but everybody was talking about web pages and you were kind of figuring it out as you went. That's what diversity and inclusion is like. Right now, people are like, everybody's talking about it, but what is it really? And the discipline continues to grow. And it's really exciting to be in on the discipline as it is growing. So that's the kind of the counsel that I would leave with respect to how I got here is just saying yes, finding out where I went, having, to Nora's point, kind of having a plumb line. And my plumb line now is, does this career, does this occupation, does this opportunity fulfill me personally? And does it allow me to advance professionally? And the answer I would give to both of those right now is yes. So I feel like I'm in the place where I'm supposed to be. And ultimately, I think that's the goal, kind of all our college experiences is, can I find the place where I fit? And you might not find it in your first, second, or third job. Matter of fact, statistics tell us millennials and centennials will likely have 5 to 7 careers, whereas many of us, we're Xers. So as Gen Xers, we were taught, find a job, a good job, stay
with insurance.
there. Yeah, with insurance and benefits, and stay there. And that's how we started our career. But what I found overall is that for me, that wasn't the path. And I'm okay with that. And as a result, I think we can tell our 2 children, one's a senior in college, and our youngest is at Seton Hall as a sophomore, soon to be junior. I can encourage them, follow your passion, make sure that you're able to sustain yourself while you do that, but find your passion. And once you find your passion, I'm going to be okay with wherever you land because I know that you will be where you're supposed to be.
And all I'll say as we wrap up is relationships. Relationships are important. Those friends that they make in undergrad, the friends that they make if they go to graduate school, the friends that they'll make at their jobs. Relationships are important. And my trajectory in my career was truly through relationship. And those relationships that I just continue to develop. I've been able to do some phenomenal things in the law, and I'm very grateful for it, but it's all through relationship. We're truly getting to know someone, not just kind of a cursory hello or exchange of information or here's my business card, but really having relationships, allowing people to know you and your values and your worth and your work ethic and knowing them. And developing those relationships, I think if you're open, you will be shocked where your career can take you. I think both of us are shocked and surprised And as Philip stated, would never have said in a million years, hey, in 2020, this is what you'll be doing. I know I would not have said that. So that's how we got here. That's how we got to where we are. We don't have much time, but if there are any questions, we would love to hear from all of you on the call today.
Hi, Nora, Philip.
Oh, what I'll say is relationship building is key, but it's also important to tell people where you want to go and what it is you want to do, because just as you don't know where you'll be 5 years from now, you also don't know where your network will be. And so someone who you met in your network in a particular position may have transitioned, may have elevated their position, and they may call you 5 years from now because they remember, oh, Jennifer. When I met Jennifer, she was a, kind of a mid-level executive at a company in St. Louis, but she told me her ultimate dream was to start a company doing XYZ. Well, in 5 years, I might be in a position to help Jennifer realize that dream. And so I will call her and say, hey, you may not remember me, but I remember you talking about something you wanted to do. I have an opportunity. So just as we sit here and tell you that opportunities came to us and that people gave us offers, that wasn't something that we necessarily scripted. That may have just been a conversation at a reception or at a dinner or in a hallway that person remembered and brought back to you. So the flexibility is key, but it's also key to be open to things that might happen that might not be part of your plan. So I'll tell you, my wife is type A. Everything she does comes with a plan, which is good because that's not how I am.
Because he is not type A.
But collectively, we're able to take advantage of situations and opportunities that benefit our family because we've had a conversation with someone, sharing with them what it is we would ultimately like to do or what it is we're interested in. Those people remembered, and they will come back to us with opportunities we could not have scripted, but opportunities that could definitely be beneficial for us. So I just, again, for us, professionalism, our family has all worked in a symbiotic way. Now we see our children in school and they are discovering themselves. They see what we've done and who we've been. And I think that lets them know it's okay if you don't have a 20-year plan on the day of graduation. I mean, some of us may want our children to have that plan.
But we also have to remember that we didn't have one.
Right.
And we most definitely didn't have one. So you got to give them that leeway and allow them to develop into who they're supposed to be. You don't know. It's not going to be revealed to you because it's their destiny. And so they are finding their path. And just as, my parents always encouraged me and said I could do whatever I set my mind to, we try to do the same with our sons and also with each other. We have ebbs and flows in our career, times when we're kind of down, the work is frustrating. And so we've got each other in that goal, in that vein, and be able to kind of bounce back and forth off each other, especially now for all of you who are working from home in this time of COVID, just to keep your mental health and your sanity. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that you're interacting. We both work from home, but his office is upstairs. My office is downstairs. I might meet him at lunch break or a coffee break, but just making sure that you don't allow work to take over your life. Work is what you do. It's not who you are. So thank you guys again. Sandra, we're going to turn the floor over to you.
Well, thank you so much. This was such a great presentation. I think you definitely shared how you got there in regards to the path that you both took, but also having a better understanding that you were a team. And making decisions for yourselves and for your family, it's going to take you in different paths because of that. So those circumstances. But I totally agree. For our students to understand, and I get that all the time. They're like, I want to meet people. I need to network. And I was like, that's what you need to do now. It's definitely build your network, meet people, listen, see, learn, absorb, and put yourself out there. And so, thank you both so much for sharing your stories with us. And I think this is a great way for us to, again, how I got here. This series, you both epitomize what we want from this series. And thank you both. And thank you both for giving us your son, who's a tremendous student. And we're so happy that he's here. And I know you're probably excited to see him for Thanksgiving. So again, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is
Sandra, we had one question. Do you mind if you answers it really quickly? It was in the chat.
So this is a question from G, and he wanted to know if I thought corporations wanting to change things in diversity is something that's real or if they're just talking. G, here's what I can tell you transparently. I don't know. Quite frankly, I know many corporations recognize the need to do something because people are coming to work and they're bringing baggage. And many of us are taught to separate home from work. I think what corporations are realizing is that increasingly, especially from people from underrepresented communities, it's becoming more difficult to separate home from work. You see something tragic that happens on the weekend, and on Monday morning, you're just not right. And companies are now saying, how can we have a conversation so that we can have a more inclusive workspace? Some of that might be genuine. Some of that just might be, I got to keep my people's mind focused on doing the work. So how can I, kind of unleash them to do that? For me, though, again, having a heart for empathy and wanting to see change, I don't question what brings people to the table. Once they're at the table, we have the dialogue we need to have. And for some, it will trigger kind of an empathetic bone in their body to say, wow, this is really eye-opening. And I'm not going to get into the discipline necessary. But what I will tell you is I do believe that more people than not are coming into the diversity and inclusion space, seeing it as something that is necessary and seeing it as an evolution, because it used to be you went to work and you did what your boss said to do. Nowadays, with millennials and centennials kind of redefining what the work experience need to look like and be, I think more and more companies are realizing I got to shift the way I think. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my best employees to another company. So at the end of the day, I do think diversity and inclusion is something that's going to stay, but I think it's going to be evolutionary, and many of us are going to have to learn what it means to bring our whole selves to work. And we're going to have to figure out how to work with people and learn who they are. Because in the past, we haven't really known that. So I do think that many different motivations are bringing people to the table. But at the end, I do think the discipline will stick because people who don't get it now eventually will get it.
Thank you. Well, again, thank you, Nora. Thank you, Phil. This is great. And we hope to engage you on campus one day where we can speak to our students in person. And I know we're meeting with the Career Center as well because they're excited about this series. So there's a lot more to come where we could share people's stories, especially our parents. There's about 11,000 parents within the Seton Hall community. So I know this is a great way for our students to start building their relationships with our parents and who can provide some opportunities going forward. So again, thank you both. Have a great evening. Thank you, everyone. And God bless and be safe, okay? Take care, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
for having us. The opportunity. Thank you.